Good evening. This is our weekly question that we do here at Inside Chassidus. And I'm continuing what we started last week. The question that was asked last week, which I didn't answer, was why was Chassidus held back in earlier generations? Wouldn't it have helped them as well? What I ended up talking about last week was really a discussion of what is Chassidus, or how Chassidus is novel, rather than address the question directly, why it was held back in earlier generations. Now that I touched on that other point, even though it was only 8 minutes worth of insight, which is very limited, let's get to this question. In the Lashon of the Maimed, Im Teidas HaChassidus Emes Lama Le'Nizgal Sebedeidas Sedishenim. If Chassidus is true, why was it not revealed in earlier generations? There's actually a Maimed from the Rebbe Rashab, which is printed in Tafresh Samach Gimel. That means 1902, it is Kislev, where the Rebbe in a private Fabrengen asked and answered this question. The Maimed is actually published in the back of Sefer Memorim Tafresh Samach Gimel that year. For many, many years, the Rebbe, our Rebbe, would refer to this Maimed as Ksav Yadach Leinei Delami, the manuscript of Chassidus with the unidentified author. For years, the Rebbe called it Ksav Yadach Leinei Delami, the handwritten manuscript of Chassidus whose author is unknown. And then eventually it was published in the Tefrei Samach Gimel, and of course it was printed there because there was an understanding that it's a Maimed from the Rebbe Rashab. Parenthetically, if you could look the Maimed up. In that Maimed, the Rebbe predicts the coming of Mashiach for Tefrei Samach Vav, which was just a couple of years later, 1905, 1906. Now to the question, where was Chassidus until Chassidus came along? So of course the basic answer to the question, the encompassing answer to the question is, everything has its time. Just like the emergence of Kabbalah had its time, based of course on the Zohar, that Bahai Chibur Deloch, the EU Sefer HaZohar, Yifku B'nei Yisrael Begalusa Barachame, that before Mashiach Tzidkenu, not only will people be allowed to study Kabbalah, but mutaru mitzvah legal ezes hachochma, like it says in the Geras Kedesh Chavav, it becomes a mitzvah to reveal Seides HaTeira, Kabbalah, which until then was a great secret. And the same is true also of Teres Chassidus. In the time that Chassidus emerged on the stage of Torah and Avodah. Why was Chassidus not revealed at an earlier time? There's two answers. And they're both critical. And they're both brought, of course, in the Rebbe Sichos. The first answer is because in the earlier generations they weren't worthy of it. In other words, Chassidus is really such a deep idea of Torah that if we had greater neshamas and we had greater minds, we'd first begin to appreciate what the gift of the Baal Shem Tov, what the gift of the Rabbeim is. But because our neshamas are on lower levels, we learn Chassidus, we allow Chassidus to affect our lives, but we don't fully appreciate how incredible a gift Chassidus is. So of course the question then becomes, if the Deidos HaRishonim, if earlier generations couldn't value it, and that's why it was not provided for them, so how does it come that we have it? And of course the answer to this question is Chassidus was not revealed to us because of our worthiness. Chassidus was revealed to us because it became a question of survival. Like the classic story of the Alter Rebbe and the Pinchas Koritzer and the Mizitcher Magid, that the Pinchas Koritzer found a page of Chassidus rolling around on the floor of the courtyard of the Holy Magid of Mizrich, and he got upset, and he thought to himself that under the tutelage, under the leadership of the Holy Baal Shem Tov, an event like this would not have occurred, because he would have been so particular into selecting the membership, the people, to whom he revealed the Seides of Teres Chassidus, that this kind of an abuse, this kind of a desecration could not take place. And this Kpeda, the Pinchas Koritzer's displeasure with the Magid's greater liberalism in the dissemination of Chassidus could have hurt the Mizitcher Magid. The Alter Rebbe, of course, became aware of this Kpeda, and the Alter Rebbe approached the Helika Magid, the Mizitcher Magid, and he dispelled his frustration. He pushed away the Magid's Kpeda, and the way he did it was by telling him the classic story of the prince of the king. And the short version of the story is that the king's son is dying. And if the king's son dies, the kingdom ends. So they destroy the king's crown, which has been around since the beginning of time. They extract the Even Tev Shebekesed HaMelech, the foundational stone of this crown, without which the crown cannot be sustained, cannot last. They feed it to the dying prince and they hope to save his life. Because, as the expression is, if you have no crown prince, what point of having a crown? If you have no Ben Melech, what's the prospect of the continuation of the Melucha? And when the Alter Rebbe explained this to the Pinchas Kor, it said the Kpeda was lifted, his disappointment, his displeasure was dispelled. That means Chassidus was not revealed to us because of our worthiness. Chassidus was revealed to us because it's Pashat survival. And it's the maximum example of Tishtapechna Avnei Kodesh B'reish Kol Chutzos. We believe, based on what's written in Sforim, that Chassidus is even deeper than Kabbalah. Chassidus is the end of Yechida. Do we see and feel and appreciate this? We believe it. Our Rabbeim told it to us. But the true measure of the gift of Chassidus, both in terms of limud and be'ikir in terms of the gili of Elokus, is way past our sensibilities. Our brains, we don't have the right neshamis, we have the right minds, we don't have the right anything. But Chassidus was given to us by our Rabbi, by the Nasi Yisrael, not because of our worthiness, but because it's a question of survival. And that's the first answer to the question. Why wasn't it revealed in early generations? Because they didn't deserve it and they didn't need it. We deserve it even less, but for us it becomes survival. That's the first answer to the question. And of course, the second answer to the question is exactly the opposite. What says in Kisvei Arizal, and then it's brought in Magen Avraham, as it says in Chassidus, the idea of Ta'ameh Chayim Zochu, that just like the Arizal writes, he's supposed to taste the macholim of Shabbos before Shabbos. Shabbos meaning to say Elamatchiyah, Elaf Hashvi, and Mashiach. So we have to taste the foods of Shabbos before Shabbos, and this is the idea of Chassidus. We're learning Chassidus because Chassidus really is Terasei Shel Mashiach. In other words, we'll know what Chassidus gave us, what Chassidus truly is after Mashiach comes. And there'll be a gili of Yechida, then we'll understand what Chassidus is all about. Chassidus was given to us prior to the coming of Mashiach as a taste of what's going to be after Mashiach comes, and with the full understanding, like the Baal Shem Tov was told by Mashiach himself, that the spreading of Chassidus, that's actually what brings Mashiach Tzidkenu. And that's the second reason why Chassidus was revealed to us, because we're approaching Mashiach. And of course in the Rebbe Sichas, the Rebbe says this is a positive reason. The first reason is a negative reason. Chassidus was revealed to us because of our lowliness. And the second reason is Chassidus was revealed to us because of our readiness, because we're holding it a moment prior to the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And of course, one of the aspects of this is the need to spread Chassidus, to teach Chassidus. And as the Alter Rebbe would say, he never intended for Chassidus to be an inyan amaflega, for a certain group of people. Chassidus is supposed to be the nachas haklal, it's supposed to be the property of all Jewish people. And it's our duty to be meifetz ha'mayanos chusa, to spread the wellsprings of Chassidus to the outside.